All right, guys, this is the blog follow-up to kind of the finalization of the Forgeworld Phantom Titan. So what I'm doing today is just trying to kind of wrap this whole thing up. I know it's been a long blog posting process. I actually finished this thing about 8 months ago now. I think just trying to get a final summary of just a couple things I missed on the blog and wanted to show you guys, you know, in person as best we can, some of the size comparisons and some of the features and some of the last tidbits of modeling advice I could give for constructing this crazy thing. So yeah, first I'm just kind of, giving you guys a nice little size comparison here. Obviously this Phantom is ridiculously huge. Everything from, Guardians in the front left there to the Wraith Lord kind of getting dwarfed in the middle here, even to the Wraith Knight, to the Revenant Titan, and to the old Armorcast Phantom in the background there. Obviously, Waste Serpents, jet bikes, things like that, just to show you guys, again, how ridiculously big this thing is on the board. Again, I'm using an inch, kind of this inch gridded mat just for scale size also, but again, that base ended up being about 16 inches in diameter. It seemed to be the good proportional size for the whole thing. Still pretty big pain in the butt to actually move around on. We did play that one Apocalypse game with it so far. A couple months back. I think that was the end of my blog post. Also had some pictures of that game, which is really cool. The Phantom actually rolled one of those crazy strategic assets after being blown up to randomly come back in on the 5th or 6th turn of the game, which was also pretty crazy. But it did take pretty much the whole game of tons and tons of shooting to take it down, but it was a blast playing with this thing for sure. So again, I did want to point out the one thing I didn't really talk about on the blog post was how many pins I used on the Phantom and where they were located. So I'm going to do that right now, just kind of basically point to you guys where all these things were. So the first couple major pins were definitely in the feet to the base, but since I glued the whole foot assembly together, I have basically a pin going all the way through the ankle joint down into, there's a block of wood in the base here that kind of secures that thing to the ground. And same thing in the back. There's really just a long pin that kind of goes all the way through the completed foot assembly, up into the base as well, into the wood part there. There's additional pins in the knee joints. Again, going from the knee joint, knee piece itself down into the kind of shin area. And then also another separate pin from the knee into the thigh piece. You can get them side by side. It wasn't too bad. And again, same thing for the other leg. Also, what I did for the waist, to get this thing together was actually, I ended up gluing the ball joints of the hips to the top of the leg first, and then I actually drilled through the whole thing from either side before you put the armor plates on of the thighs to then hide the pin penetrations. There's kind of a hole where this piece mounts. It's kind of a ball joint, again, that it's like a ball piece and socket that kind of mounts to, so it's actually pretty easy to hide after you pin it up. You kind of had the pin sticking out, cut the pin off, and then you could, again, easily glue that armor plate back on afterwards. So same thing, there's a pin basically going all the way through the leg, kind of in this orientation, and then a separate one just crossing all the way through back here. Posing this thing's tricky. I think that actually worked out for the better, since I was trying to get this thing on the base. I was going back and forth on the kind of the exact leg, kind of walking pose I was going for, so it allowed me to kind of move those things around. I was using sticky tack for a while. Actually, now that I think about it, I think I used a sticky tack to, I didn't actually glue it first. I used a sticky tack and then drilled the long holes for the pins. So then the pins and their orientations were in place. Then I could take it out, remove the sticky tack, and then repin the whole thing while, so then I was able to glue it with the pin in place. And again, the pin was probably sticking out again 3 or 4 inches just for good measure. And then after it was glued with the pin in, then I was able to trim the end of the pin off and then put those armor plates on. So that worked out pretty well. There's a big pin, I think you saw this in the blog post, that kind of goes all the way from once all these armor pieces start coming together for the chest, the pin goes all the way up through to the underside of the neck. The head is actually magnetized on, and I think you guys saw it as well in the blog. So the pin basically stops at the underside of the magnet in the neck area. So again, there's one kind of coming down pretty much through the neck and torso areas as well. The elbow joints also were kind of a solid piece, so they were able to just easily screw in through all that green stuff that's kind of lodged in that shoulder piece that you guys saw also. So that pin again goes from the shoulder, or from this upper shoulder joint into that green stuff into the upper part of this torso piece. Again, that's repeated on both sides. Then also there's a pin from the the arm piece to the elbow joint. That's also a separate resin piece. And then from the elbow joint, that kind of just sticks out into here. That allows the gun arms to be removable. The hands are removable as well, which I'll show you guys in a second. Those are magnetized. And then what I did is I ended up just putting a pin through the weapon, through the end of the kind of the D cannon into the gun also. So again, I could just take these out and not worry about if a magnet wasn't going to be strong enough. I think you can definitely get some that are strong enough if you want to magnetize sort of the gun muzzle to the gun back of the arm. But the pins kind of worked for me. It was the easiest thing to do. Just simple drill and sticking the pin in there like that. So again, and again the same thing's repeated for the other elbow. So there's a pin from the arm to the elbow, and then the elbow just kind of sticking out. So I'll show you guys. Again, these pieces ended up being magnetized, but pretty much that's it. There's not a lot of, there's definitely a lot of pins, probably about 3 feet of length or something in the total 3.5 feet of length in the whole thing. But it definitely is, definitely is worth it, and you don't want this thing kind of, being unstable if you have to transport this thing around. So the last thing, I just did kind of walk around this thing. I think it's pretty cool. I was really happy with the pose, sort of the final pose of this. It's kind of an aggressive, just kind of walking stance, kind of stepping on this, Imperial Aquila into this trenched area. I'm really happy with the base, how the base turned out. I think it was a fun, nothing too crazy or overzealous, or it's not a lot of, tons of detail, but it was a good way with sort of using the foam, using that Hotwire Foam Factory tools and their sort of mortar system. Really created a cool, kind of muddy, some kind of textured earth surface you could kind of step into, and you can see the fan kind of creating a crater. I think it's ended up being pretty. I was really happy with it. I think Drybershing did a lot. I was able to get some rust effects on the little tank trap there. But yeah, really happy with the base. I think the pose was fun. It was kind of pretty much what I envisioned when I was kind of laying this thing out schematically. Yeah, the base works pretty well. It's interesting to see it next to the other Phantom with no base. But that's just something. Those armor cast models are great because they're really just extremely solid resin. You can pretty much drop that Phantom off the table, and it wouldn't be too worried about it actually. Would still not want to do that with the Forgeworld one at this point. Definitely still fragile. But I ended up not even gluing the pins into the base, so it actually gives it the whole thing a little bit of sway, which I was a little concerned about, but it's actually ended up being a little nice as it kind of moved it around. It's actually sturdy enough where I'm not worried about it snapping at the feet or anything, but just that little bit of flexibility, and as long as you can get over your model moving around, seemed to be pretty well. So last thing I want to show you guys again was just how this thing kind of, comes apart if you ever for storage. It actually worked pretty well to take it to the event. So again, the head's magnetized. You can just take that off. Again, the hinge opens up for the head, which is pretty cool. And got to paint the driver, which is a lot of fun, which you guys saw the pictures of. The shoulder plates come off. Again, magnetized at the top, just for fun. If you want to take those off. The arms, again, the hands are magnetized. So you are able to... I've been sitting in my garage for a while. So these can come off, so you can just interchange the weapon mounts, which are really cool. Again, these things can release and come out if you need to. Let's take one out for a second. Again, not too worried about the sway in the model. So that's what I get for trying to do this with one hand. I also did get the glaive for the Phantom, which is pretty neat. It's also a pretty cool weapon. I'll put the hand on it real quick. Show you guys what that looks like. Again, I haven't really, definitely not anywhere near finished painting this thing, but I had to, of course, get the obligatory Samhan red and black and a little bit of white before the apocalypse came. So yeah, that gun's really cool. The glaive's really cool for sure. I definitely want to paint that in the near future if I can. And then finally, the star cannon's removable. You can take the switch out with pulse laser if you'd like. So then the final, again, as you guys saw in the picture, the whole torso, I used that plumbing joint union connection to kind of Dremel up into the underside of the waist there, and then screw in the top joint of this thing. So it's a pretty fun effect. You can kind of swivel this thing around, kind of a la in the spirit of the the original Armorcast ones just uses bolts and stuff, so you can still get that kind of effect. Not quite with the arms, but it's still a pretty fun piece to to play around with. So I really enjoyed this project. I think it's definitely not the easiest thing in the world to build by any means, but it's definitely worth it if you guys are interested in such an undertaking. It's definitely a blast model experience, not for beginners, but it is a a doable project, I think, with just a little bit of patience and a Dremel. Definitely have to use that for this thing. It's just tons of flash when you get the piece out of the box, but definitely worthwhile endeavor. And yeah, hope you guys try to sneak that back on real quick here. That's temporarily, it's fine. But yeah, so enjoy the size comparison. I think it's very interesting to see all these things to scale. They look smaller sometimes in the pictures, but now let me tell you, this thing is massive. So definitely enjoyable project. Appreciate you guys checking out the blog, and I hope anybody else who tries to do this crazy project has as much fun as I did, and I hope this can be some help to them. So, all right, guys, signing off. Until next time.